In the wake of the Napoleonic Wars, the British Admiralty turned its vast naval resources towards science and discovery. At the forefront was William Edward Parry, a Royal Navy officer whose early career at sea began at the age of 12. Parry's ambition was forged in the cold waters of the North, having served as second-in-command during the 1818 expedition under Captain John Ross. That voyage had ended in controversy when Ross claimed a mountain range, the Croker Mountains, blocked Lancaster Sound, a claim Parry privately doubted. In 1819, at just 29 years old, Parry was given the chance to prove his theory and lead his own expedition to find the elusive Northwest Passage. The Northwest Passage is a 900-mile historically treacherous sea route through the Canadian Arctic archipelago, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Long sought as a trade shortcut to the Far East. Preparation was meticulous. The Admiralty selected 2 ships, the Hecla, a 375-ton bomb vessel with a large hold, and the Griper, a 180-ton gun brig. Both vessels were taken into dock for thorough repairs and significant strengthening to withstand the crushing force of Arctic ice. The Griper was undoubtedly named for the archaic definition of attacker or controller rather than the modern meaning of complainer. No mention is made of the alternative nautical meaning to gripe, where a ship, either by poor design or sailing technique, tends to end up with flapping sails and poor steerage. Regardless, the Griper seemed to be aptly named for the latter definitions, as the Griper was considered by Parry to be utterly unfit for this service. The Griper required further refit and delayed their departure as her condition concerned Parry for the safety of the crew. To sustain the crew of 94 men for up to 2 years, the ships were packed with innovative supplies. Fresh meats and soups preserved in tin cases, essence of malt and hops, and a vast array of anti-scorbutics including lemon juice, pickles and sauerkraut to prevent the dreaded scurvy. In a rare gesture of encouragement, the Admiralty granted all participants double the ordinary naval pay. Parry also carried a sophisticated suite of scientific instruments, including astronomical clocks and specialized thermometers, as the mission was as much about physics and magnetism as it was about geography. The expedition departed Deptford in May 1819. On May 4, 1819, the Hecla and Griper were towed to sea by the Eclipse, a steamboat of 60 horsepower, in what is recorded as one of the earliest use of an engine-powered tugboat to tow a vessel to sea. On June 15, the expedition spotted Cape Farewell, the southernmost point of Greenland, at a great distance. Though hardly uncharted territory, Parry knew that this was the real beginning of the expedition. By the 18th, they encountered their first icebergs and sea ice. By July, they reached the middle of Baffin Bay, facing a formidable 80-mile barrier of ice. By the 25th of June, both ships were guided through the ice under tow by the rowboats. The wind suddenly freshened and caused the ice to close in so fast that they barely got the rowboats aboard. They were trapped by the ice. Through a grueling technique known as boring, using the ship's weight to force open narrow leads, Parry pushed through into open water. On August 4th, they reached the critical moment, Lancaster Sound. Sailing directly over the spot where Ross had claimed to see mountains, Parry found only deep, clear water. By August 22, 1819, Parry noted in his narrative,
"Our prospects indeed were truly exhilarating. The ships had suffered no injury, we have plenty of provisions, crews in high health and spirits, and a zealous and unanimous determination to accomplish the grand objective on which we had the happiness to be employed."
Parry also noted cliffs of secondary limestone, in which fossils were abundantly found. Parry was making scientific observations regarding evolution 40 years before Charles Darwin published his landmark Origin of Species. By September, they crossed the 110th meridian west longitude, a feat that entitled the crew to a £5,000 reward from Parliament. £5,000 in 1819 is worth about £350,000 today using the Bank of England estimates. They had penetrated further west into the Arctic Circle than any Europeans before them. The crew had showed extraordinary discipline, managing the tedious navigation of fogs and ice with tireless labor. By the evening of September 5, 1819, Hecla and Griper lay at anchor, tucked into the newly named Hecla and Griper Bay on the newly named Melville Island. Parry wrote,
"The Bay of Hecla and Griper was the first spot we had dropped anchor since leaving the coast of Norfolk, a circumstance which was rendered the more striking to us at the moment, as it appeared to mark, in a very decided manner, the completion of one stage of our voyage."
On September 26, the expedition was forced into a winter harbor on Melville Island as the sea froze solid. For 10 long months, Parry's primary mission shifted from exploration to survival. The decks were covered with a housing cloth to keep out snow and retain warmth. To manage the absolute darkness and temperatures that plummeted to -55 degrees Fahrenheit, Parry introduced a rigorous routine to combat scurvy of the soul, the depression and lethargy caused by isolation. Parry established the Royal Arctic Theatre, where officers performed plays for the men. They even started a weekly newspaper, the North Georgia Gazette and Winter Chronicle. Daily exercise was mandatory, often consisting of the crew running around the deck to the tune of a barrel organ. On July 20, 1820, Parry wrote that the ships were finally free floating in their winter harbor, but not yet able to sail out of the harbor to open water. When the ice finally broke in August 1, 1820, the expedition left their winter harbor and Parry attempted to push further west, discovering Banks's Land on August 8 before the encroaching winter forced a retreat. The expedition returned to England in November 1820, having lost only one man to illness, an extraordinary medical achievement for the time. The voyage was a triumph of science and survival. Parry had mapped thousands of miles of unknown coastline, collected numerous biological specimens, and provided the first consistent data on the magnetic pole's influence in the high Arctic. The success of the 1819 voyage established Parry as the preeminent Arctic explorer of his generation. He would lead several more expeditions in the following decade, refining his techniques for wintering in the ice. Members of his crew, including future explorers like James Clark Ross, would use the lessons learned on Melville Island to eventually reach the magnetic North Pole and explore the Antarctic. Parry didn't just seek a passage, he created a blueprint for how humanity could endure and study the most hostile environments on Earth.